There's something you're doing right now that's making you weaker, and you don't even know it. You're sharing too much. You think you're being open, honest, building trust. But here's the thing. Every time you reveal something about yourself, you're handing someone a weapon they can use against you later. I know that sounds harsh, maybe even paranoid, but stay with me. Machiavelli, the man who watched empires rise and fall, who studied power like a surgeon studies anatomy, he understood something most people never figure out. He said that the most dangerous thing a leader can do is let people see too much. Not because honesty is bad, but because knowledge is leverage. And the moment someone knows what you want, what you fear, what you need, they own a piece of you. Think about the last time someone used something you said against you. Maybe it was months later. Maybe it was in a moment you weren't expecting, but they remembered, and they used it. That's not an accident. That's strategy. So today, I'm going to walk you through the 5 things Machiavelli warned you to never reveal. Not to your friends, not to your colleagues, not even to the people you think you can trust. Because in the real world, trust is earned in private and exploited in public. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming untouchable. Repeat after me. What I protect in silence, no one can use against me. Before we get into the 5 things, you need to understand why this matters. Machiavelli wrote The Prince in a world where information was currency, where knowing someone's next move meant the difference between ruling a city and being exiled from it. And what he observed, over and over, was that the people who lasted weren't the ones who shared everything. They were the ones who kept their cards close. Thomas Hobbes built on this. In Leviathan, he argued that humans are fundamentally competitive. We're not just competing for resources, we're competing for status, for respect, for control. And the way you win that competition? By knowing more about others than they know about you. Here's what I mean in practical terms. Every conversation you have is an exchange of information. Most people treat it like it's harmless, but the people who understand power, they're listening for what you need, what you fear, what you want. And once they have that, they can shape how you see the world. They can influence your decisions. They can move you without you even realizing it. Francesco Guicciardini, Machiavelli's intellectual rival, said something I think is even sharper. He said, never tell people your plans, show them your results. Because plans can be sabotaged, results can't. So the first principle, guard what matters, not out of fear, out of strategic clarity. The first thing you must keep hidden, your next move. Machiavelli studied Cesare Borgia, one of the most ruthless, effective strategists of the Renaissance. And one thing Cesare did consistently, he moved in silence. He didn't announce his plans. He didn't telegraph his intentions. He just acted. And by the time people realized what he was doing, it was already done. Here's why this works. The moment you tell someone what you're planning, even if they're on your side, you create opportunity for interference. Maybe they don't mean to undermine you. Maybe they just mention it to someone else. Maybe that someone else has a competing interest, and suddenly your move is no longer yours. Carl Schmitt, the political theorist, wrote about this in terms of friend versus enemy. He argued that in any political space, you need to know who's aligned with you and who's opposed. But here's the deeper insight. Even your friends have their own agendas, and the second your plan conflicts with theirs, neutrality turns into opposition. So what do you do instead? You build in silence. You execute quietly. You let people see the outcome, not the process. Think about it this way. If you're planning to leave a job, you don't tell your coworkers first. You line up the new position, sign the contract, and then you give notice. If you're launching a project, you don't announce it before it's ready. You build it, refine it, and release it when it's undeniable. The move that no one sees coming, that's the one they can't stop. Repeat after me. I move in silence. My plans are mine until they become results. The second thing you must hide? How much you actually have. Machiavelli warned that a prince should never let his enemies, or even his allies, know the full extent of his strength. Because the moment people know what you're capable of, they adjust. They either fear you and work against you, or they assume you'll handle everything and stop contributing themselves. Max Weber studied this in modern organizations. He documented how bureaucracies function, and one pattern he found was that people who revealed their full capacity too early were consistently overworked and undervalued. Why? Because once leadership knows you can handle 10 things, they give you 15. And they don't increase your compensation or your authority. They just increase your load. Here's the practical version. Never let people see your upper limit. If you can work 12-hour days, show them 8. If you have savings that could last you 6 months, tell people you're comfortable for 2. If you have 3 backup plans, let them think you have 1. This isn't dishonesty. This is strategic reserve. John Locke talked about this in terms of property and rights. He argued that people have a natural right to protect what they've earned, and part of that protection is not advertising it. Because the moment people know what you have, some will try to take it. Not violently, but through persuasion, through obligation, through guilt. So you keep your reserves hidden. You show competence, but not excess. You show stability, but not wealth. You give people just enough to trust you, and no more. The third thing you must guard? Your real emotions. Now, I'm not saying you become a robot. I'm saying you become deliberate about what you let people see. Montesquieu, the architect of separation of powers, understood that institutions survive because they don't react emotionally. They respond through process, through structure. And individuals who want to be untouchable, they do the same. Here's why this matters. The moment someone knows what makes you angry, what makes you afraid, what makes you desperate, they know exactly where to push. And people will push, not always maliciously, sometimes just to see what happens, sometimes because they're testing boundaries. Tacitus, the Roman historian, documented this beautifully. He wrote about emperors who fell not because they were weak, but because their emotional reactions were predictable. Their enemies would provoke them deliberately, knowing exactly how they'd respond. And those reactions, those moments of visible anger or fear, became the weapons used to destroy them. So, here's what the untouchable person does. They feel everything, but they show almost nothing. When someone tries to provoke them, they pause, they breathe, they respond with calm, measured words, or sometimes with silence. Because silence is the most unnerving response you can give to someone who's trying to get a reaction out of you. Jean-Jacques Rousseau argued that humans are naturally emotional, naturally expressive, and he's right. But he also said that society shapes us, and the people who succeed in navigating society, they learn to control the expression of emotion without suppressing the experience of it. That's the balance. Feel deeply. Show selectively. The fourth thing, never let people know who you actually trust. This one's subtle, and it's going to feel counterintuitive, but hear me out. Machiavelli said that a prince must appear to trust everyone equally, but in reality, trust almost no one completely. Because the moment your enemies know who you rely on, they know exactly who to target. Not you, them. Polybius, the Greek historian who studied the Roman Republic, documented how entire political alliances were destroyed not by attacking the leader, but by isolating them, by tarning their closest advisors, by creating doubt in the relationships they depended on. Here's how this plays out in real life. Let's say you have a mentor, someone who's genuinely helped you navigate difficult situations. If other people know how much influence that person has over you, they'll either try to discredit them in your eyes, or they'll try to win them over and use that relationship to get to you. So, what do? You keep your inner circle invisible. You take advice from multiple sources, you make it unclear who actually influences your decisions, and you never, ever say things like, "I trust them completely," or "I'd be lost without them." Because dependence, even on good people, is vulnerability. Thomas Hobbes understood this. He said that in the state of nature, alliances are temporary. They exist as long as they're mutually beneficial. The moment one party has more to gain by breaking the alliance, it dissolves. So, the untouchable person? They build relationships, they value loyalty, but they never make it obvious where that loyalty lives. The fifth and final thing you must keep hidden: your full strategy. Let me explain what I mean. You can share your goals, you can talk about what you want to achieve, but the how, the actual method, the specific steps, the backup plans, that stays locked down. Livy, the Roman historian Machiavelli studied obsessively, documented battles where entire armies were defeated not because they were weaker, but because their strategy was known in advance. Someone talked, someone revealed the plan, and the enemy adjusted. Here's the modern version. If you're building a business, you can talk about the problem you're solving, but you don't explain your pricing model, your distribution strategy, or your competitive advantage. If you're navigating a political situation at work, you can express your position, but you don't reveal your alliances, your timing, or your leverage. James Madison and John Adams, the American founders who studied Machiavelli closely, applied this when designing the Constitution. They built a system where no single branch of government could see the full picture of the other's plans. They created strategic ambiguity by design. And that's what you do in your own life. You create just enough transparency to build trust, but you hold back just enough to maintain control. Rousseau would call this the balance between the individual and the collective. You participate, you contribute, but you don't surrender your agency. Because the person who reveals their full strategy is the person who gets outmaneuvered. So, let me bring this home. The 5 things you must keep hidden: your next move, your full resources, your true emotions, who you truly trust, and your full strategy. Machiavelli wasn't teaching you to be dishonest, he was teaching you to be strategic, to understand that in a world where everyone is competing for status, for power, for control, the person who guards what matters is the person who survives. Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, Montesquieu, they all understood this in different ways, but the core truth is the same. Information is power, and the less people know about you, the less power they have over you. So, stop giving it away for free. If this shifted something in you, if you recognized yourself giving away too much, then you know what to do. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been too open, too trusting, and paid the price for it. And subscribe, because the next video breaks down the exact psychological tactics people use to extract information from you without you even realizing it, and how to shut them down. Don't miss it.